Moving on now to sports news. Sports! I don't really have enough general knowledge about this to make a light-hearted opening joke for this segment. Sports! Australia has become the first World Cup final side to release a collective statement from players criticising host country Qatar's human rights record. That story again. Country with terrible human rights record and history of sports washing angry at Qatar for stealing their shtick. Some 16 players, including ex-Arsenal and Brighton goalkeeper Matt Ryan, appear in a video in which they draw issue with the country's treatment of migrant workers and the LGBTQIA+ community. And if there is one country that knows about treating migrant workers poorly, it is Australia, who has two thumbs and treats immigrants poorly. These guys. Forcing migrant workers to pick fruit in order to renew their visa with long days in the heat, making them pay for terrible living conditions while paying them as little as $2 per hour to do it. And the standard play is to yell loudly and blame your opponents for things that you are doing yourself. Eh? Right? Worked for Donald Trump, and nothing has gone poorly for him since he finished being president, so why not give it a try? And frustratingly, I almost had to agree with Piers Morgan on this one when I saw that he had accused the Socceroos of hypocrisy over their World Cup protest. Fortunately, in true Piers Morgan fashion, the Icarus of making a good point, he flew too close to making a good point, and instead of landing on our horrible human rights record, he just flew right over that, probably because it was put in place by the coalition who are friends with the Murdoch Empire, who gave Pierce a job on Sky News, giving him a Murdoch number of 2, almost the smallest there is. For the uninitiated, one's Murdoch number is the smallest number of connections one has back to the Murdoch Empire. It's sort of like a dystopian version of your bacon number. His concern was that they are still playing, despite complaining. But when Meghan and Harry weren't happy and decided not to play anymore, you complained about it for nearly 2 years now. You gotta make up your mind, champ. Now, obviously, I would be remiss not to point out that Qatar has been worse than us as a whole, and recently conditions have improved for workers in Qatar, particularly through the partial dismantling of the kafala system, which allowed employers to take workers' passports and block them from leaving the country. Something we've never actually done. And it is those small victories that allow us to maintain our moral superiority. Take that, Qatar. And while we're kicking the rich and powerful, let's continue doing that as often as possible. Over to netball, where Netball Australia has been making headlines after Gina Reinhardt's mining company, Hancock Prospecting, pulled out of a $15 million sponsorship deal because players on the Diamonds netball team took a stance against the sponsorship after Indigenous player Donnell Wallum requested an exemption from wearing the logo due to comments made in 1984 by Reinhardt's father, Lang Hancock, where he suggested a plan to kill off troublesome Indigenous people through sterilisation, saying he'd...
Those that have been assimilated into earning good living or earning wages amongst the civilised areas, that have been accepted into society, and they have accepted society and can handle society, I'd leave them well alone. The ones that are no good to themselves and can't accept things, the half-caste, and this is where most of the trouble comes, I would dope the water up so that they were sterile and would breed themselves out in the future, and that would solve the problem.
Yikes. Let's just take a moment to let that wash over us. These are the people that we basically let run the country. Okay, enough of that. Woo! Just look, check it out. Come on, check it out. Moving on. Alright. Weird that the billionaire daughter of a mining magnate who thinks rich people should be able to pay a fine to avoid jail, and whose father bankrolled an unsuccessful secessionist party in the 1970s, has trouble connecting with the downtrodden. I can't understand that at all. I suppose she just isn't used to diamonds giving her a hard time. Besides, None of the other sports washing that she's done has proven to be an issue for her. After all, she does sponsor Swimming WA, Swimming Queensland, Volleyball Australia, Rowing Australia, and Artistic Swimming Australia, and recently struck a deal with the Australian Olympic team until 2026. To be fair, Artistic Swimming Australia, I don't know, they kind of need to take any deal that they can get, right? Who else is going to support them? That is, unless they all turn out to be muscular, peak of fitness, hard-bodied snowflakes who need to spend less time exercising with their minds and opinions and more time building a bigger wallet for all the cash donations that they're going to get by having no scruples. Reinhardt has never publicly addressed or distanced herself from those comments. And her dad has been dead for ages. Gina, he is not going to know about it. It's not going to... You could say it, it's fine. He was wrong. A lot of us have to come to terms with the things that our parents said, okay? It's a thing that with time it comes. Like, we grow up, we realize that our parents have some opinions that we don't really agree with. And you just sort of, you gotta, negotiate that a little bit with yourself and with your relationship with them. And given that your guy's dead, given that he's dead, it's okay. You can just be like, he was wrong. It's fine. It's almost as if it was a clause in his will. Some people have to spend a night in a haunted house, others stand by family racism. Whatever your family decides. And she has stood by those statements like they are the house words of the Reinhardt clan. We mine, and we racially discriminate. Despite the fact that, ultimately, Wellham found the pressure too much and decided that she would wear the logo. So there was no need for her to pull out anyway. But someone had stood up to the billionaire, and she'd had a fight, flight, or freeze response and decided to freeze by freezing all of the support for the Diamonds. Fortunately for the Diamonds, Netball Australia has signed a $15 million sponsorship deal with Visit Victoria days after Hancock prospecting through its public tantrum. Now, under the deal, which will run until June 2027, the Diamonds will adopt Victorian branding for home and away games, and players and coaches will front tourism campaigns. It won't surprise listeners of this podcast that immediately the Herald Sun writer and host of the imaginatively named The Friday Show on Sky News and Murdoch stan Rita Panahi jumped straight to her opinion column to deliver a piece that would have read as a little on the nose if you'd seen it as a satirical piece of The Shovel. She said the Diamonds must reject the Visit Victoria money unless they are supportive of everything that Dictator Dan did to Victoria. And look, she makes a fair point. I am not sure if the Diamonds are ready to sign on with the idea of supporting a series of difficult measures put in place to keep as many people safe as possible in an increasingly complicated and evolving situation. Oh, actually, no, I've got it. I know what she is against. See, Rita is a diehard for murder, and seeing a group of people stand up for any kind of ideal, principle, or anything aside from bending my opinion to the nearest dollar dispenser. So she is genuinely shocked that they would care where their money comes from in any capacity. Makes sense. Makes sense. When someone has so little scruples, they'll take money from anybody. Gina and Hancock released two separate statements. The first announcing the withdrawal of the $15 million sponsorship, and the second addressing athlete activism, which said, Hancock and its executive chairman, Ms. Reinhardt, consider that this is unnecessary for sports organisations to be used as the vehicle for social or political causes. Going on to clarify that using athletes for social and political causes was more of an act for businesses to undertake, and they are fundamentally misunderstanding the relationship. See, the relationship is more of a distraction more than anything else. The athletes sing and dance in a uniform that bears the business logo, jingling a metaphorical set of keys, saying, look over here, look over here. I said, fucking look over here. Why aren't you looking? Stop going over there. Stop. No, there's nothing over there to see. There's nothing over there. It's some skeletons that we forgot to give them a branded logo shirt, so fucking look over here. If they want someone who's willing to shill for them without compromising the sport, they're going to have to start sponsoring ex-athletes. See, ex-athletes speak to the hearts of the people who saw them race and will likely hold the same opinions as them. So when Dawn Fraser raised concerns that Gina Reinhart may pull out of the sports sponsorship, saying Reinhart, who also sponsors the Australian swimming and rowing teams, so realistically Fraser has no vested interest in supporting Reinhart at all, said she was a good-hearted person and a hard businesswoman. Going on to say if she needed someone to say something racist or transphobic, then Dawn was her girl, and would happily take the bullet for Reinhart, for a price, of course, but not so much as you'd expect. She's a pro after all. She does it mostly for the love of the game!